Welcome to the Metamorphosis Project podcast. I'm your host, Tenya Eickenberg, and this is a space where transformation begins. Here, we dive deep into energy healing, self-care, and the power of mindset to help you break free from old patterns and design a life that feels aligned, vibrant, and authentically you. Each week, we explore the tools, techniques, and real-life experience that guide us toward lasting healing and growth. Because true metamorphosis isn't just about change. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. Now, let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back to the Metamorphosis Project podcast. Today, I have Monica Walston here with me today. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you, Tenya.
I am excited for this conversation because we're going to be talking about some stuff that a lot of people either don't want to talk about, don't know about, or they're not quite sure where it comes from, how to understand it. So I'm excited to kind of dive into this conversation. So let's get started with your transformational story. How, what happened before you were like, something's got to shift, something's got to change, and then take us through your transformation.
I've always been like an entrepreneur. I've always had my own businesses. So I started, I was 16 or 17. I learned and started, I was a nail tech for 17 years and was kind of doing other things here and there too. A lot of working like in restaurants and bars and things like that, waitressing. And so I had the nail business for 17 years. And then I just got really kind of, I don't know, I didn't enjoy doing it anymore. So I quit doing that and decided I was going to teach myself web design. And so I did that and then did that for 25 years. And kind of all the way through that, though, I've always made jewelry. And so I opened a jewelry business probably about 10 years ago, like a holistic. I make like bugs and different things, electroformed in copper and, like spiders and dragonflies and all that fun stuff. But I'm going to say it's probably about 2012. I started going through just the spiritual awakening. Now, I've always been into all the woo-woo stuff. You know what I mean? So I've always been into, the tarot and the psychics and, just kind of anything, even witchcraft, anything kind of woo-woo, crystals, just everything, astrology, you name it, all the good stuff is what I call it. And so about 2012, I think it was about 2012, I started going through this, just kind of this spiritual awakening. I had never grown up with religion. I think, well, a little bit. My grandparents were LDS and they raised me till I was 5 or 6, I can't remember. And so I did gotta kind of go to church up until I was about 5, but after that I wasn't raised with any kind of religion at all. And so the funny thing about it though is that, I always tell people UFOs and aliens got me into spirituality because I mean it did. That was like my entry point, you know what I mean? And so about a couple of years ago, maybe about 2 years ago, I decided, just because, the jewelry business was kind of, not making enough money, and the way that the economy was with, all the inflation after COVID and all that fun stuff. But I decided, I'm like, I needed to do something. I can either go back to web design or, I can do, and I thought, no, if I'm going to get another job, it has to be something where I can actually help people, not just making something pretty or provide a service, but like seriously help people, transform their lives. Right. And so I kind of narrowed it down to a few things, and then I landed on hypnosis. And from there, I decided, because I've always been, now I'm not an experiencer in that I've been abducted, at least not that I know of. You never know, I guess. But I see UFOs everywhere. Like
Yeah.
I'm they're all over the place. It doesn't how you know it doesn't hurt that I live in the Uinta Basin, which is kind of woo woo itself, but because like Skinwalker Ranch and those kind of things. But so anyways, yeah, I started my training and then I finished it last July. And
Mm-hmm.
ever since then, I've just been, trying to help as many people as I can because I think we're really going through a spiritual awakening, like something that we've never been through before, I
Right.
feel. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that need help, healing those traumas so that they can, grow in their own, soul,
Right.
if you want to say.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I just kind of narrowed it down to from I was just gonna do like the whole past life regression thing because that's what I'm trained in.
Mm-hmm.
But then I decided, since I don't want to just because past life regression can help with pretty much everything.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I but I wanted to kind of focus more on helping people that have either been or think they've been abducted and to help them heal that trauma so that they can move on from it,
Mm-hmm.
figure out the why. Usually when people know the why, then that just it kind of changes their whole world, even in
Yeah.
just one session. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Our egos often need to know the why.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I think if we got down to it on the soul level, our soul
Hmm.
already knows that we were on another planet or with another species.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that it's our ego that wants to know that
Oh
why, and
yeah, a hundred
sometimes
percent.
and it's our ego that usually needs the healing,
Yeah,
right? It's
exactly.
that human part of us
Yep.
that needs to know. In my line of work, I have found that many, many, many people have been abducted, usually around between the ages of 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Um, and if, I think sometimes it's for various reasons. So, for various reasons, experimentation, DNA collection, whatever.
Yeah.
So did you first come into the awareness of aliens and other entities? Hello, cat. Um, during one of your hypnosis sessions?
Did I first come across the
Yeah,
entities?
yeah,
I
during
mean,
that.
I was pretty much well versed just because I've always my entire adult life I've kind of been in that realm and have gotten a lot of information from, other people and just the things that you
Hmm.
watch and the things that you read and the people that
Yeah.
you talk to and the whole nine yards. Um and so I kind of already knew what the deal was and who was who kind of deal, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
with the different species and the things attached to each one
Right.
and things like that. So I don't know that I know anymore now other than the people's individual stories with them.
Okay.
Their experiences and their
Right.
stories.
Right.
I've kind of, the things that I'm hearing aren't new to me.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right. Can
So,
you share an experience, a story that someone has told you while they were under?
sure. Yeah, I've got a couple. I always give everybody permission, a thing where they can say, you can
They
share
give you
this.
permission.
Yeah,
Right,
they give
right.
me permission, but
We're not using
yeah,
any
yeah,
names or
yeah, yeah.
location
No, no,
or
no,
these are
no.
just, yeah.
Well, I have permission, but for this one, I'm going to tell you. But yeah. So this, I worked with this young lady, very nice. She lives in Ireland, and she had been having experiences her entire life. Like her entire life.
Hmm.
And she was at the point where she was terrified to go to sleep. And obviously lack of sleep causes a whole myriad of other issues.
Right.
You know, we could be talking about that all day. And, so she finally decided that, after suffering for so long, she wanted to get some answers. So we did a session, and it was pretty, actually, a really amazing session. She did a really good job. But she was able to talk directly to them, find out exactly what they're doing and why. Somebody had, in her familial line, had made a contract
Mm-hmm.
with the entities, and because of that, it was generational with her, because
Right.
her mom had experiences. I can't remember if she said her grandma did or not, but her sister's son, her nephew, is kind of starting to remember some things as well. And what's great about that is that when somebody has a session like that, excuse me, when somebody has a session like that, they not only can heal themselves, but if they've got family members that, because a lot of the times, like I said, the why is what is healing.
Right.
Once you find out what's going on and why. And so basically, with her, it was a breeding program,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And, they were taking eggs. She had, had pregnancies where, she had lost it, but there was really nothing to lose, type of deal,
Right.
which was, pretty telling. But she, after her session, she just she's like a completely different person now.
Mm-hmm.
She's not afraid to go to bed. She's reframed the experiences that, by the way, she's still having, but now she looks at it from a completely different lens, through a
Mm-hmm.
completely different lens. And in addition, she can now go and have those conversations with her family, which will help to heal them too.
Right.
And they might need to, to have their own session to dig deeper for themselves, but you know, it's
Yeah.
still just that one session that she had had so far has, changed kind of her entire world. You know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
just, it's just
Absolutely.
amazing. Even though I know, that it's going to, it still blows me away every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
I
what I
feel the
mean?
same.
It's
Yeah.
still like, it's just so, I get so excited about it, because it's just so amazing what we're capable of, for one, that, has been suppressed for so long.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And for people to think that um we're the only ones in the universe is a little naive.
Yeah, maybe a little
Um
arrogant as well.
yeah, yeah. For them to think that we're the smartest species in the world
Yeah, the best
in
kid,
the
yeah,
universe.
and the biggest kid on
Um
the block. Yep,
yeah, I'm sorry,
the toughest kid. Yeah,
but when you come up with TV shows that are, dumb ways to die, I don't think that we're the smartest.
yeah. Well, that's just one example, but yeah, yeah. And not only that, it's statistically, if you want to go science based, you want to go fact based, it's statistically impossible
Yeah.
for us to be the only ones in the universe.
Yeah, there's too
It's
many
literally impossible.
unexplained things.
Yeah,
We know that the government has been hiding things, that's not surprising.
yeah.
Where, when you look at science fiction movies or TV shows, one of the
I
ones
call
I
those
always
soft disclosure.
yeah, the one that I
Yeah.
always refer back to when I'm talking to people is Stargate with Richard Dean Anderson. And I think it was
I
like,
saw the movie, but I didn't see the series.
oh
So
my gosh, I
I've
wish
heard
that
it's
they would
good.
I wish they would remaster the series because it's been so long that it's just
Yeah.
it's
It's
not
kind of
it's
cheesy.
grainy and
Yeah. And
it's
it's, yeah.
and Jason Momoa was in Stargate Atlantis. It's
Oh,
just when I watch that, knowing what I know now,
it's
it's
like you're watching a
like
completely different movie, huh? Or show.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We could travel through wormholes to different planets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I would call astral traveling.
Yep.
And we do that when we're sleeping. And people sometimes wonder why they're so tired when they wake up.
Yep.
There's always a physical reason, a mental reason, there's a spiritual reason, and there's always many different reasons that
Yeah.
work in combination as to why you might be tired when you wake up. But one of them is that you're traveling off world, that
Yeah.
you may be fighting battles or taking care of other species or
Hmm.
interacting with other people while you're sleeping.
Yeah. It's just our bodies that need the rest,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Yeah, our energetic bodies, they don't need to rest. They have
Yeah.
a lot of energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's our physical bodies that can't keep up.
Yeah.
And that's where taking care of it on the physical level comes in, right? Getting
Yeah.
adequate sleep and eating well and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, what is um the most, gosh, I don't know, enlightening um story that has come out of these past life regressions? Like, has anybody ever woken up and go, wow, but I can't, I don't know if I believe that
Oh, well,
that's really what it
yeah.
was.
Pretty much everyone
Okay.
has done that. You know what I mean? Because the people that I'm working with, most of them haven't tried hypnosis before.
Right.
And so then when they come out, they wake up from their, I don't really want to say wake up because they're not really asleep, but when
I know
you
what
are
you
done
mean.
with
Yeah.
when you're done with your session and they're like, "Oh my gosh." I think the most surprising, I guess not surprising, but well, to them, the most surprising thing to them is the fact that they could actually see the things, like actually in their mind,
Right.
see the aliens, see the ship, see the space, see the planets, wherever they're at, whatever they're doing, that
Yeah.
it's actually, visual without being visual. And I think that's where a lot of people are shocked is you know, they have their session and they're not, even though we talk about it beforehand, I think a lot of people are shocked and they don't really think that they're going to see things.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And it seems like in most of my sessions, you know, it, that's their most surprising thing that they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe said or seen those things, or I was actually able to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
these entities and, so on and so
Right.
forth. I think that's kind of like their biggest, as far as from their standpoint goes.
Right.
I think that's like the biggest shock. For me, I don't know, just everything kind of, I'm in awe of everything nowadays. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Just because I don't know, I'm 54 and I'm starting a new career, but I feel like I'm getting my second wind. Like, I don't think I've ever been as excited about a
Mm-hmm.
job as I have been about this one.
Right.
You know
That's
what I
good.
mean?
That's great.
I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. Everything else was like, because I've always been a creative. I've always done something creative, whether it be nails or web design or photography
Right.
or jewelry making or, painting. Like I just got done doing this room, just whatever, anything
Mm-hmm.
creative. This is creative on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
it's a whole nother level, which is great. Because if I don't have that, I mean, I'm not closing my jewelry business. I'm just shifting kind of things around,
Right.
but
Right.
but so I still have like that creative outlet because if I don't have a creative outlet, I'm miserable. I can't. I just seriously can't even function if I'm not making something or, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
Working with my hands, doing something.
right. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of people come from that space.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Especially in the spiritual, communities. Have you noticed of how many people in the spiritual communities are creatives?
oh
It's like
yeah.
they go hand in hand.
Well,
It's like
I think humans in general are creatives.
oh yeah, for
It
we're
may
creating
be,
our
you know,
own
if
reality.
right, if you're a technology person, right? You're
Mm,
creating code or you're
yeah,
creating programs.
right.
If you're a CEO, you're creating business, you're
Hmm.
creating uh dreams
Yeah.
in a sense, right? There's I think humans in general are creatives. I think it's just in how we
Hmm.
look at it,
Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah, for sure.
Right. So is there a particular group of people that you work with versus another? Like, do you work primarily with men or women, both people
It's
with
been kind of
overwhelm?
50-50 right now.
Okay.
It's both. Nobody you I was kind of coming into it thinking that it would be mostly women,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm surprised at how many men are finally just, opening up to it, you
Right.
know, kind of, being just more open, maybe touching a little bit more with, their feminine side. And by feminine side, I don't mean, you know, wearing makeup and flamboyant or anything like that. I just mean, which is fine too. I just mean, that side that says it's okay to get help.
Right.
You know what I mean? That
Right.
side that's like, takes them to that point of, enough is enough. Let's figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I
Well, that's
mean?
wonderful. I do notice that, um, once you get into this world of energy, the spirituality, you do start to see, other people waking up that you didn't think would be waking up
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
they shift.
Yeah.
Um, when I got into the Jim Carrey is one of the ones that
It's
comes
a
to
him. I
mind
know. Yeah. Yeah.
that I never would have thought that he would have been one to shift his perspective,
Yeah.
just because he was, I mean, I always saw him as a comedian and he's
Yeah.
still very artsy
Oh, very
in that
artsy.
sense, but I
Even with
just
regular
never,
art, he
yeah,
does, that too. So,
I just never, him and, uh, who's the other guy? Um, Brand.
Russell Brand.
Thank you.
Yeah. I
He
watch
was
his
another,
podcast a lot.
he was another one that I never,
Thought
foresee
because of all the stuff he
shifting.
went through. Yeah.
Right,
All
right.
the things that he did with the drugs and the sex
Yeah,
and all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And he's open about it, obviously. But yeah, he's like Claire on the other end now of
Yeah,
that
yeah, he's
spectrum.
gone from one side to the other,
Yeah.
which some people do,
Yeah.
and that's okay. That's their journey. So you do hypnotherapy. Is there, what else do you play with? What else do you get? What
I
else do you
mean,
use to further your own practice?
yeah, human design, huge,
Mm-hmm.
huge human design. I've been working with that a lot lately.
Okay.
Even just within my business, the way that I'm operating it, using human design to put out, to do my business in a way that's right for me, to run it in
Yeah,
a way that's right for me.
absolutely.
And in knowing yourself a little bit better, for anybody who hasn't tried human design, I highly recommend it. I recommend it so much that I've got a yearly program that
Mm-hmm.
I do. And in that yearly program, I give them like you can choose which one they want, but a talking human design chart. And they've got like a calendar on the genetic matrix site,
Mm-hmm.
but it tells you like what your gates and transits and all that are, but it doesn't, you have to go look up each individual meaning.
Right.
But I'm actually in the process of developing a way that I can provide my clients with like a Google or iCal calendar
Mm-hmm.
that has their exact recommendation for that day
Okay.
in the calendar. Do you know
Oh,
what I
very
mean?
cool.
Which
Yeah.
is something I want to, be able to start offering. But on my yearly package, I include one of the genetic matrix talking charts because you
Okay.
get your regular chart for free on there, which is
Right.
great.
Yeah.
But if you want one of, and I had that my regular one forever. But you got, like I said, you got to look up all the different, gates and all that
Right.
kind of stuff,
Right.
and it can get kind of confusing. So I just started with the shadow chart
Mm-hmm.
because I just figured that's where I'd get the most information and the most growth
Mm-hmm.
is if I started with the shadow chart. I did that. I couldn't believe it. It like literally told me at this point in my life, I should be a therapist or a counselor.
Oh, wow. There you go.
I've never done anything like this before. None of my
Yeah.
jobs have been anywhere in this realm. Back in the day when I was like, gosh, it was when I first met my husband. I was doing it. So it would have been over 30 years ago. We're working on 32. So, but I used to do natal charts by hand. Like I
Mm-hmm.
had the ephemeris and like all that. Which I don't understand because I'm actually a high school dropout, but I'm not, I'm actually pretty smart, but I left early and started having
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
And, which was great because now they're all older and, I can
I feel the
enjoy
same way.
everything. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but, I used to do natal charts and, just the whole astrology thing. I really thought for a while there when I was younger, I was going to, get into
Mm-hmm.
astrology. But I guess maybe I should have stuck it out longer. But the stigma between all that kind of stuff and oh, yeah, that's, bullshit and
Oh
this and that and
yeah.
the
Yeah.
other,
Yep.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I feel like had I known then what I know now, I would have stuck with that kind of stuff a little bit more.
Oh,
You
well,
know
I
what I
think we
mean?
all feel that way, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if I knew that I would have such a hard time losing weight in my late 40s, I
Yeah.
I would not have gained all the weight in my 20s.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, I hear
I
you.
think everybody goes through that.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think it's part of our blueprint is
Mhm.
to go through these
Yep.
different lessons to learn
Yep.
something. So
That's
you
the
you
whole
had to
reason we're here.
you had to go through whatever it is you learned through astrology at that time to
Yeah.
get you to the next
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
I don't think you were meant to do
No.
astrology
Yeah. No, I
for your
believe
entire
everything
lifetime.
happens for a reason, but you do kind of think about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, God, wouldn't it be nice? If I knew then what I know now. We all say that,
Absolutely.
but
Well,
but
that's
I
why
do believe we're here for, everything
absolutely.
happens for a reason.
Yeah, that's why we pass that knowledge on to the younger generations,
Yeah.
is so that
Yeah.
they have that knowledge.
Yeah. We could learn a lot from, the Native American traditions and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Where I live, well, it's Vernal, Utah, so it's close to, reservation and stuff.
Hmm.
We've got it's the Ute tribe up here. And the people that I know and they're just so open. You know what I mean? They've known this kind of stuff forever.
Right. Yeah.
We were talking about it the other day. I was on this radio show and we were talking about it. And one of the hosts was Native American. He was Ute. And I just said, yeah, you guys know all like the good stuff. Like, how did we get so far apart
Mm.
in our evolution? You know what I
I have
mean?
an idea.
What's that?
Religion.
Yes. Well, yes. Yep. For sure.
Religion,
Yeah, absolutely.
how the Bible was interpreted,
Yeah. Yep.
really changed our view of the universe.
I agree 100%, which is why I'm so thankful. I think I said this to my dad a couple of months ago when I was out visiting him. I said, I'm really thankful that I wasn't raised with religion,
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
because
I mean, we were all
it's,
exposed to it, but
yeah.
I see the documentaries on,
Hmm.
Mormons and LDS, and I don't even know
Yeah.
if they're the same thing.
Yeah. LDS Mormon, it's the same thing.
You
That's
know,
just
I
what they call them,
saw,
I guess.
um,
But did you know that in the LDS Book of Mormon, there's stuff in there about aliens and UFOs?
yeah,
You
I have
know?
heard that. I have heard that.
Yeah. A lot
But
of people have been saying that, and I've got a brother that's LDS. I have a son that is too. And that's their choice.
yeah,
Everybody has to walk their own path.
yep.
But I hear all the time. I've heard that so many places. And I asked my brother one day because he's like staunch. He
Hmm.
goes to church.
Right.
Matter of fact, he works for the church now. Anyways, and so he's like, no, there's no anything. And I'm like, are you sure? Because everybody else is saying it is in the Book of Mormon.
Hmm.
So maybe but it's the thing too, is that if you're not open to it, you're not going to see it.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? I think
Exactly.
he's not open to any of that kind of stuff. He just wants
Exactly.
this, the religion to be told what to do. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Yeah, some people need that structure.
Yeah,
And
and
that's,
that's okay.
again,
Everybody
that's,
has their
yep,
path.
absolutely, absolutely. Is there any tidbits, any nuggets that you would like to share with the listeners to help them through their own journey?
You know, I've said this a million times, but I just think it's so important. And it really doesn't have anything to do with hypnosis or religion or
Hmm.
anything like that. Stop judging people.
Yeah.
Judging that is probably the number one thing that would change this world like that.
Yeah, and there's
Stop judging people.
yeah, and
Everybody has their own path.
they do. And with the state in which our world is in at the
System
moment,
works. Yes.
there is a lot of judgment coming from both sides.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is incredibly sad
It is.
that we worked so hard for so long to kind of get rid of those judgments. And
Yeah.
within a few months, we've allowed them to all come back and
Yeah.
be
It's
brought back up
crazy.
to the surface.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So I agree with you.
Yeah. It's just judgment. Just, realize everybody's on their own path and they have to work through it in their own way. Even, and I might get a lot of slack for this, but that's okay. Even, for example, okay, so this is the way I look at it. And I didn't always, but this is the way I look at it now because of my spiritual awakening. People like, you know, the ones we consider the bad people, you know, will use, no, I don't want to use that because I'd make a lot of people mad. Um, just like, for example, the presidency stuff. Let's
Mm-hmm.
use that politics for an
Mm-hmm.
example. So, on one side, everybody's, I don't really hear any, as far as the argument goes, I guess it doesn't really matter. But let's say, for example, there are a lot of people think that, Biden was basically, a crook and,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Right.
But to me, it's those souls that come down here and do stuff like that that show us, you know what I mean? That takes a very advanced soul to take on a role like that.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
To
Like,
come to know that they're going to come into this human existence to be hated.
exactly.
Yeah.
But knowing that that was what needed to be done, because I think right now that we're in a stage of ascension where all the bad's getting brought up so that we can see it and deal with it
Mm-hmm.
and move on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's where I kind of think we're at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have to say, it does scare me a little bit in how it's all being handled.
Yeah, I agree, and yeah,
You
it's
know,
all, but it's kind of like, it's kind of all the same stuff that we've been dealing with
it
for,
is, it
you know what I
is, it
mean? And
is
I'm not
just,
a
it's
political
just a different,
person.
yeah, it's just coming from a different
Yeah,
place. But
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
If this was happening with
It's,
the other party, it'd be the same thing. It'd just be,
yeah.
there are things that our world needs to change,
Hmm.
and it always gets worse before it gets better.
Yeah, always. And if you
Um,
don't know, all the things that they're bringing out with, the money being spent and and things like that, to me, that's a good thing because we're seeing it. We can address it and deal with it instead of, just bitching about it. It doesn't do any good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not going to go down that hole too far because I do have my own
Your own
opinions on
opinions. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that.
absolutely. But it just in, in general, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about Doge, but like just in general, all the things that are going on right now are so that we can see what's going on, we can deal with it, and then, let it go.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, is, the second, well, some people might think that that's more important than non-judgment, but I think, forgiveness
Oh yeah, that's yeah. Yeah,
is
I
huge.
think we need to start forgiving ourselves first.
Yeah.
Forgive
Yep.
ourselves for holding resentment, for holding judgment, for
Yep.
holding grudges.
Yeah.
And then yes, we forgive those who hurt us.
Yeah.
I tell my clients when we talk about forgiveness during sessions, I give them this example. I said, my parents, being raised by my parents in an emotionally chaotic home
Hmm.
was probably one of the worst things they could have done. There wasn't physical abuse, there wasn't um, name calling to us kids, but we saw the name calling between our parents. We saw them
Right.
yelling at each other. It was just that kind of emotional chaos. Um, it was horrible,
Yeah.
but I forgive my parents.
Yeah.
I can't hold the grudge against them anymore. I can't keep
Yeah.
blaming them
Yeah.
for how I turned out,
Yeah.
because up until age 12 or 13, by the time I turned 12 or 13, you become your own person. You really do.
Yeah.
And you start to figure out what you like and
Things.
what you don't like.
Yeah.
And at that point, it is really up to us as individuals to decide what we're going to take on as truth and what we're not. And that's why they say teenagers are so rebellious, is because they are trying to figure
To
out
decide. Yep.
what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah.
Um, and it is just a matter of how well are you going to stand in your own foundation
Yeah.
and grow as your own person.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't we can't hold people in the past accountable forever.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about because I grew up in a different way as well. And there really wasn't, I mean, we got our butts beat or whatever, stuff like
Hmm.
that, but nothing, there
Right.
was no physical abuse either. But I come from, I have got 5 siblings, so there's 6 of
Hmm.
us. And, one of them is like way younger than us. The youngest is like 15 years or more
That's how my
younger
mom
than
grew up.
us.
She was the oldest, and the youngest is 16 years
Yeah.
younger than she is.
Yeah. The rest of us are all kind of around the 2, 3, 4 years
Hmm.
apart,
Right.
in that kind of area. But, things happened in my upbringing that 2 of my brothers won't talk to the family I mean, they'll talk to siblings,
Hmm.
but they won't talk to my mom died last year, or 2 years ago, but they won't talk to my dad. And
Hmm.
that wasn't their mom anyways, but they refuse to talk to my dad. And that's,
Hmm.
but that's their choice. But I just think they'd feel better if they
Well,
just
they can they
forgave him,
can
but he needs to do the same thing. You know what I
well,
mean?
they can forgive him,
Yeah.
but they
And
don't
still
still
not
have to talk to him.
exactly.
Right. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like, there's the buzzwords going around about parental estrangement, and adult child estrangement is really a hot topic
Yeah.
again, or it always has been, but I think because of social media and
Yeah.
algorithms, I'm seeing more and more of it. Um, and I just had this conversation with my co-host on our new podcast, that our kids don't have any obligation to us.
Yeah.
Our kids
I
did not,
agree.
if you look at it from a human standpoint, not the spiritual standpoint, and from a spiritual standpoint,
Mm.
our children chose us as their parents,
Right.
right? To
Mm.
to to
For a
come into
reason.
this human existence
Hmm.
for a reason.
Yep.
If you look at it from a human standpoint, our children didn't ask to be born,
Right.
right? So our children do not have an obligation to us. We have an
Yeah.
obligation to our children, to raise our children, to continue having those relationships with our children. They're always
Hmm.
going to be learning from us
Yeah.
as parents, even
Yeah.
when they're adults. But if we do something that causes them harm or
Hmm.
causes them discomfort, they're not going to just automatically say, I don't like that, I'm not talking to you ever again. There's always a lead up.
Yeah.
There's always there's
Oh yeah.
always a pattern
Hmm.
that us as parents are doing that is causing our children harm.
Yeah.
And it usually goes on for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't think a lot of parents who are being cut off by their children understand,
Yeah.
is that there is something that your children found to be
Yeah.
hurtful or harmful to them.
Hmm.
They have spoken to you about it in different ways,
Yeah.
and you haven't seen it. You
Yeah.
haven't been willing to acknowledge that you had a hand in that.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to admit that you hurt your children.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is, if
Yeah.
your children feel hurt by you,
Hmm.
it's our job as parents to look at that and go, I'm so sorry that I did that. I
Yeah.
didn't realize.
At the time. Yep.
Right. At the time, I
Yeah.
didn't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I think the problem in my family is that my dad is so damn stubborn. And he's what, 76? I think
mhm,
he'll be 77 and on the 17th. He's like super old school. And
yeah.
he's of the opinion that uh so when I was growing up, we always went to my grandma's house on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever we lived didn't matter. We'd always go to grandma's house and visit grandma and grandpa, and grandpa was there. And he is of the opinion that the kids need to come to the parent.
So that's my parents are the same way.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's like I've tried explaining to him, how stuff really is in a way that he can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on him, but it wouldn't kill. It would probably make him feel way better too to just pick up the phone.
Right.
But he doesn't.
Yeah.
He won't do that.
Yeah.
They're disowned. They're cut out of the way. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yep. Yep. Guys, we did have the same parents.
maybe, but you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, it works both ways.
It
You
does.
know what I mean?
It does.
And then
It
I told
does.
him too, because my grandma, his mom, she's 94, I think, lives
Mm-hmm.
by herself still in the same house as when we were kids, and she calls him twice a day in the morning and at night. I mean, granted, yes, she's lonely or whatever,
Right.
but she always calls her kids. So so I tried telling him if it's the kid's responsibility to call the parent, how come you're not
Right.
calling grandma and grandma's calling you?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
He's like, oh yeah, I don't know. And
Yeah. And then they
he just
don't,
doesn't
right. And
get it.
then
And
there's,
some people don't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only time,
They're just not, it's not in their plan apparently.
no,
You know
no,
what I mean? And that's
no.
okay. Everybody's on their own
Yeah.
path,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely. And I think that we give out the same energy that we receive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that could be, they could be thinking the same thing. They're putting out the same amount of energy as they're receiving. And so it's a battle of the energy. It's a battle of the
Yeah.
of the wills.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can only give so much
Yeah.
before you just can't
You
give
can't anymore.
anymore
Yeah.
because your
Yeah.
energy is being siphoned.
Yeah. And I think that's probably what happened with my brothers because there was a lead up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was a lead up.
Yeah.
But I've just learned that, like even with my mom, I had terrible issues with her.
Mm-hmm.
And, and right before, no, we knew she was going to die.
Yeah.
But she was one of those that was, she just clammed up. She would not talk to you. She would not like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, okay, well, I forgive you. And, I'm still
Yep.
working on the forgiveness stuff because there was a lot of shit.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still working on it to this day.
Yeah.
But, I realize that that's all that's going to do by hanging on to all that stuff is just make me sick.
Absolutely.
And there's no point in that. I'm just getting started on my second go around here.
There you go.
to keep going. You know what I mean? I'm kind of digging, my life right now. So,
Yeah, me too. Monica, where can people find you to work with you?
so my website is monicawalston.com. That's WALS as in Sam, TON.com. And on YouTube, it's at Monica Walston. On Facebook and Instagram, it's at Monica Walston QH,
Awesome.
which stands for Quantum Healing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And I've loved this conversation. I appreciate it so much.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Metamorphosis Project podcast. I hope today's episode brought you inspiration, joy, and a spark of empowerment. Remember, transformation is an incredible journey, and every single step you take towards self-care and healing brings you closer to the life you truly desire. If this episode uplifted you, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us to share this journey of hope, resilience, and joy with many listeners. For more tips, support, and inspiration, come and visit us at designyourexistence.com. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing, and keep shining brightly. You are absolutely worth every bit of love and care you give to yourself. Take care, stay joyful, and be well.